Hello everyone, this is Charles McNeely for DevDoc Theater, and what a privilege it is to be here. Ms. Beverly, you were originally one of the people that I spoke to whenever McNeese State University did our play called A Hurricane Kaleidoscope, where we talked to people who had hurricane stories. And you were one of them who had a Hurricane Audrey story that really moved not only me, but everybody who worked on it. So, how old were you on June 27, 1957?
I was 12 years old. I just turned 12. My birthday was June 14th. But I remember it just like yesterday, I can tell you. It's something you don't forget.
Can you give us an idea of, right before, the day before Audrey, what was happening? What were you doing?
The day before Audrey, which was a Wednesday, we had a cow that my mom and dad had butchered. So we wrapped the meat, we went and picked it up at the butchery, and we wrapped the meat and put it in the freezer. It was a beautiful day, it was warm, but it was a nice day that day. And we knew there was something in the Gulf, but we really weren't too worried about it because we really didn't hear, we just knew something was there and that's it.
You'd gotten radio reports, but back then, it's not what we have now.
No.
Weather reports were few and far between.
That's exactly. And that night, that Wednesday night, we went to church. We had prayer meeting that night, and when we came home, my mom listened to the weather report on the radio, and the weather report was no cause for alarm tonight. Just stay tuned tomorrow. So we went to bed and
Well, Audrey was notorious because it was moving slowly and it wasn't as powerful, but then it sped up and got stronger very quickly.
And it made a straight line to us. And my aunt that lived close to the canal there at the caution light, she called.
Now that's in Oak Grove.
This is in Oak Grove. She called and told my mom that the water was coming up in her yard.
What time was that?
This was like 2 o'clock in the morning. Mom got all of us up. We got dressed. She called her friend that was just not far down the road at all and told her, because she wasn't originally from down there, but she was good friends with us. Her husband worked with my dad. Called her and told her that they needed to get up to the schoolhouse. Her mother, her sister-in-law, and her sister came in at 10 o'clock that night from Louisville, Kentucky to visit for a week. They all drowned. They never made it to the schoolhouse. Later we went down where the place was when we were allowed to go back, and their car was there, turned upside down. The suitcases were still in the trunk. Never unloaded the suitcases.
Thank you for that. You remember their names?
Richard, we called her Miss Tiny Richard. Her husband's name was Tiny Richard. It's really Richard, but they weren't from down there, so they were Richard. But her name was Louise.
Louise Richard, Tiny Richard, and that was her husband's name.
Yes, and he worked with my dad. My dad worked for Pure Oil Company. And he was out in the Gulf. Her husband wasn't home.
Your mom and dad, what was their name?
My mom was Ruby, and my dad was Bill Rutherford.
Was there a connection with Rutherford Beach?
Yes, that's all family.
You had brothers and sisters?
3 brothers, no sisters.
What are their names?
My oldest brother, it was named William Rutherford after my dad, but he passed away. And then my brother that was just a little bit older than me, his name was MacArthur, Gerald MacArthur Rutherford. And he lives in Livingston, Alabama. And then my younger brother, his name is Leland Rutherford. He lives in Nashville, Tennessee. And they were all in the storm. Yeah. My youngest brother was like 7 years old. And then the one just a little bit older than me, he was 15.
Okay. So y'all are at the house. You got the call, at 2 a.m., the water's coming up. What happened next?
My dad got in the car and he shined the light out by the road. the water was already coming up in our yard. We couldn't get out on the road. I remember standing at the back steps looking, and there was a big moccasin, I'm sure is what it was, all crawled up there at the edge of that water. That's something I'll never forget, seeing that. Anyway, he put the car back in the garage and came inside, and we have to go to the school now. And we couldn't walk on the road. The water was too high. We had to walk in the pasture. We made it to the schoolhouse.
How far was that?
It wasn't far.
A football field, maybe?
But just a little bit more. Yes, not too much more than a football field. And we had to cross over a hurricane fence and all that, but the water was already over the fence. So
how did y'all know it was there?
My dad knew about it. We knew there was a fence there, but we were able to get over it and get there. And then other people were coming too. There were probably...
Now what school?
This was South Cameron High School. They had just built that brand new school. Had it there the year 56, 57. My oldest brother graduated that year. Then the storm came and destroyed it. So that was the only year that they had that new school. Then they rebuilt it, and I think in 58 or 59 is when they opened it up again. They had it all fixed up to have school there again. We got in the school and the water kept rising. We were in the auditorium and the people kept coming in. There were probably, I would say, 25 or 30 people that came. The air condition in the auditorium that was way up high, it was a big unit. There were people that got up in the air condition to save their lives. They got up there and thought it won't get that high. But they had a ladder to climb up there in it, but then the ladder washed away, and when it was over with, they were stuck, so they managed to get down some way. I don't remember. And different ones thought they didn't really want to get up there if the water there's no way you can get out. So, but it didn't get that high. There were at least 2, maybe 3 families that were up there with little babies even. But then the water kept rising and it got on the stage and it was slanted. The front part was slanted and that filled up with water and it started coming on the stage where we were. They put a table next to the wall, tore the curtains in strips so we could hold ourselves. They had pipe up along the top part of the wall for the heating. So they wrapped the strips of curtain to hold us in place. If they wouldn't have, we would have been washed away. So that's how we were able to stay right there from probably around 9 o'clock in the morning till probably, I guess that big wave came in around 10:30 or 11. I looked out because everything in the front of the auditorium was gone. Looked out and I saw the big tidal wave coming over. But before that, before the water came up on the stage, it was already coming a little bit. We could look out the side window. And the neighbors, we were able to see there was a trailer that a good friend of mine, her sister, lived in. We saw it flip over and float off. And then there was also a flashlight coming. We could see it was people. But nobody could go out and get them. They never made it to us. We have no idea who it was. And it could have been anybody traveling on the road that had to get out. But anyway, when that big tidal wave came over, everybody just knew that was it. And that's whenever there was a lot of hollering and crying, and we just knew that was going to be it. The men decided to go behind the wall.
After the wave, or as the wave was?
After the wave. Because it really filled the auditorium even more. So they went behind the wall, which was the band room, came and got each one of us and brought us and put us on a table behind that wall. We stayed there till about 2 o'clock, and then everything got really, really quiet. And we thought, oh, well, it's over with. Never thinking that about the eye. We just thought, and that's my thinking as a 12-year-old. Sure. The rest might have known. Yes. But I mean, I thought, well, it's over with. But we were still in water. I was in water up to my neck even, standing up. About 30 minutes that lasted. And then it went, it only lasted about 30, maybe 45 minutes. And then that was it. We were on the table and we could tell that it was coming down by the blocks that were the cinder block on the wall. And so we knew that things were going to get better. And before dark, the water was all gone out of the school. And that's whenever they found the wrestling mats in the gym. It had gotten caught in some of the debris. Put them on the floor for us to lay on that night. I don't think really anybody was able to sleep. There was no light or anything like that. We were at least able to kind of...
You had some kind of comfort.
You know, so, and then the next morning, whenever daylight came, the men went out to see if there was anybody that they could find up and down the road, and that's when they found Leslie and his mom and them and brought them back.
The Griffiths, right? Miss Geneva Griffith, D.W. Griffith, and Mr. Leslie and his family.
Yeah, and they brought them up to the schoolhouse, you know, where we were. And so we walked all the way to the corner where the caution light is, just to look, because the highway was out of...
When you say the caution light, it's where Oak Grove and the Creole Highway, I guess you could call it.
Right there. The highway didn't have any water on it at all. The water had already drained off. So anyway, there were several helicopters that landed on the football field and took the people that really needed to go, that had been out in it. I'm sure Miss Geneva probably went, yeah. After that, we went back to the school, and there were some canned goods, cans that had kind of fallen around. Like there was a can of peaches, I remember, that they were able to open, and at least gives, because we had no one had eaten for that whole day, and then the next day also. And there were some little children there, so they were able to eat, you know, some of stuff that, what I remember is the peaches. Then we had word that they were going to come and pick us up at the canal, which is there by the caution light. And so we rode all the way to Creole in a boat. They came with a little speedboat. And then when we got all the way to Creole, they had Army trucks there waiting for us. So we got in the back of the Army trucks and made it all the way to Lake Charles to the arena, the McNeese Rodeo Arena, and we met friends that it was really so sad, and they'd say no, they didn't make it, you know, and then we'd meet some more, and and they'd say no, we're the only one that made it. That's when we realized that how much things had happened. Yeah.
How long were y'all there?
We were there we probably were there the whole day. We got there probably about 1:30 that next day, 2 o'clock. And there were different people that would come, and my mom's sister was there to meet us, you know, and take us to her. She was from Lake Charles. Her name was Sylvia Stagg. Her husband was David Stagg. They owned a dairy there in Lake Charles. And Eddie Rutherford and my mom's sister Marie, they owned a dairy also right next door to him. Anyway, even though he was a Rutherford, they were kin to me both ways, on my mom's side and my dad's side. We went there, yes.
After the rodeo arena,
we stayed there probably about a month or two before we got a place that we were able to rent in Lake Charles. And we would go down whenever we were allowed to go back. We went to and where our home was, there was nothing left. Not even, I think there was one dish that had fallen down, you know, in the mud. There was a hole that you probably could set our whole house in. It was unreal. And if we had stayed home, I don't think we wouldn't have made it at all. So anyway, we went to their house and stayed, but we would come every day and clean our place up and try to get things. And we had tents to stay in back then. The Red Cross gave us tents on our land, and they even brought us you know, the wooden outhouse. They put us an outhouse even. That's it. They had that. And then I guess we were able to keep that for about 3 or 4 months, and then they came and picked them up. They had cots and they had blankets for you if you happened to stay. We didn't really stay down there, but it was like when we would go and clean, we could go in it and stay or take a nap or whatever we wanted to, you know.
Get out of the sun or something like that. So how long did it take to...
We did rebuild. It took by November. I think we had Thanksgiving. In the house, the best I can remember. And then my dad went to work, and he got sick at work. And so they brought him and this was the first part of December. and they brought him to the hospital in St. Mary in Port Arthur. And he was fixing to come home that morning on the 9th. And he had a heart attack right there in the hospital and died right there. So
just a few months after Audrey.
And I'm sure the stress that went along with that, because he did make the comment several times, if I hadn't been home, if I had been at work, I'd have lost my whole family. And I know that was in the back of his head all the time, you know, so.
What did y'all do after that? Did y'all move back home?
We did. We moved back home and we started our life for 48 years, a wonderful life, you know. I graduated from South Cameron High School. I was cheerleader. I was a majorette too at one time. I was even Miss Cameron Parish in 1962. And that was a highlight of my life. It really was. And they're going to have a fit about me saying that. My friends are going to say, I can't believe you said that.
Well, you know, that was something very special.
It was very, very special to me, you know, so anyway. But other than Audrey, I had a wonderful life. I had a great life, you know. Good Lord's been good to me. And the other storm that we had, everybody got out and there was no deaths. And hey, things are just things. You can't take none of it with you. And
was that the biggest lesson? I mean, what was the biggest lesson from Audrey that you learned about life or about?
You can't take anything for granted, and you can't take what's going to happen the next day, because here we were that Wednesday wrapping meat to put in the freezer with a beautiful day. It was hot, but other than that, it wasn't bad. Then the next day we faced what we faced. You cannot take no time at all for granted. You don't know what tomorrow's going to bring.
Well, what an extraordinary story, and just the human spirit and the strength of everybody that you and everybody else is just. Is there something that I haven't asked about that you feel like you would want to share about that experience or anything regarding that?
Well, the lady that I told you that my mom called to come to the school, but they never made it. This is a story that will never get told. And then the family was from Louisville, Kentucky. And whenever we went back to their house, the first time we went back, I found a little picture that belonged to her in the mud. And I brought that picture, cute little picture. In fact, I have it somewhere, here even. I don't get rid of it, you know. And it went through Rita. And yeah, and Rita, and I found it after, yes, I found it after Rita. I sure did. I found it after Rita, and I thought, this is just supposed to be. And you know what I always wanted to do? I thought I would love to give this back to the family in Louisville, Kentucky. I know their last names were Evans. She was an Evans before she married and was a Richards. And I thought, you know, maybe I could go on Oprah.
We're not Oprah, but I'm gonna put something on the video saying that if you know anybody from the Louisville area by the name of Evans, please contact us.
So maybe we could find who it is. And I still have the little picture. I have it. And what was so sad, you go there and here their suitcases are still in the trunk of the car. They did not even take the suitcases out of their car. I think they were going to leave the next day. And most everybody else, it was going to be the next day that they were going to leave. Make sure you stay tuned tomorrow. That's what everybody was doing. And my mom called her that morning when she got the call from her sister saying the water was coming up. She called her immediately to come to the school, and she said they would, you know, be on their way, and they never made it. In fact, they never even got in the car. The cars were still right there. Yeah, it would have been too far to walk to it. They'd have had to come in their car, you know, so they wasn't able to make it.
Well, that's tragic, but hopefully we can find some relative.
Hey, that would be wonderful. If we could find one of them.
We'll see what we can do, definitely. Well, Ms. Beverly, this has been, again, just an incredible story and an amazing spirit and strength that you have, as well as everybody that I've talked to.
Well, the thing that we got that really came across good, everybody left. And that is the wonderful thing. After Audrey, everybody, left. And like I told you a little bit before, whenever I would go in the classroom to sit with the kids, that's the story they wanted me to tell them.
You were substitute teaching, and you motivated.
That's it. I'd say, get through with your lessons that your teacher left you, and I'll tell you the story. And they got busy and they did all their lessons. They said, okay, we finished. Now tell us about Audrey. So I would. I had no trouble when I went in the classrooms with that. And I told them, I said, I'm telling you this to let you know this happened right here, and there's nothing keeping it from not happening again. And sure enough, 48 years later, it did happen.
We're helping the generations to come understand and be ready.
Exactly.
Well, thank you.
Well, you're welcome. And it's good to see you again.
You also. Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for watching. This has been an honor for Ms. Beverly Thomas. And to be continued. Hopefully we'll have a few more from Hurricane Audrey. But thank you all very much for listening. Take care.